Hi, folks, and welcome. This is Inside the Leader's Mind, and I'm David Suson. I'm so excited to have you join me today, and especially my guest, Jeremy Jensen. He's the CEO and founder of Encore Search Partners. They're the largest privately held executive search firm in Houston, Texas. And under his leadership, Encore Search has scaled to 40 full-time employees and nearly $15 million in annual revenue, while being perennially recognized as one of Houston's fastest growing companies and a best place to work 6 times, which is amazing. With over a decade of experience in professional headhunting, Jeremy is a sought after voice in the executive search industry. And today, Encore Search Partners has positioned itself as the number one firm for organizations that want to grow revenue through people acquisition. Please welcome Jeremy Jensen.
Excellent. Thank you for having me on, David. We had a chance to socialize before going on air, and I found out that you've been married 33 years. And so I just met you 10 minutes ago, but you're already a great role model of mine.
I got married when I was 2. So if you're doing the math, how old I might be. So there, that's how it works. Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely. Well, Jeremy, thank you for being here. I got to tell you, when I was learning about you, your website, your bio, and everything, one of the first things that really came to mind is how you have become one of the best places to work 6 times. What's the secret sauce that has made that happen?
yeah, great question. So the short answer is we started implementing EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, way back in 2017. And part of the whole EOS process is every single quarter we facilitate confidential employee surveys, right? And so it forces us to ask some very tough questions. How happy are you at work? If there was something that you could improve, what would it be? Do you feel like your compensation and benefits are competitive? But the best one that gives us a tremendous amount of insight is do you see yourself working here in 2 years and why? Please be detailed and explain, right? And so, over the years, people have said, like, I don't know, there's not a clear path for upward mobility, or I'm not sure. 401k is very important to me, and we don't have a 401k plan. And so taking that data way back in 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, and then filling in the gaps in the boat, right? Plugging in the holes has really given us an opportunity to continue to rise because we fill in our blind spots, if you will.
So there are thousands of companies that do surveys and they get this feedback, but nothing changes. What is different about your leadership that you actually make the change to make it better?
Mhm. Yeah, great question. So, I actually operate always from a position of logic, and I try to remove emotion from it. And so, anytime that we implement certain things in order to be more competitive, I'll give you an example. Hey guys, historically we've offered $400 per employee every month towards your health insurance. We know that the health insurance premiums for the for the basic plan has gone from 390 to $567. And so what the company is going to do is the company is going to increase the employer contribution from $400 to $600. And if I
Wow.
and if I take that $200 per month times 38 people that are on the health insurance times 12 months, let's just round it off and say, hey, that's a $250,000 increase in employer contribution. The way that we're going to make up for that is we're no longer going to offer commissions on these types of deals, or maybe your commission is changing on this, right? And so by being very transparent with the team, every single time we give them something and we say, hey, we're going to give you this, but this is going to change and this is why, then that really breeds a tremendous amount of trust in leadership that we're not hiding from having tough conversations. And so that's kind of the answer is we're always constantly trying to solve employee challenges, but not at the cost of hurting company profitability.
So And I understand that, right? I remember one of my clients many years ago, he made some really tough decisions. He was the president CEO, and he said, "Look, I have to take care of the shareholders. That they're the ones that own the company.
Mhm.
I have to do what's right. And if that means I make some changes over here to make them happy, I have to." The question is, and to the comment you made is, maybe you got to modify commission. How did they feel about that though?
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, some of the legacy people, it really stings, right? The individuals that have maybe joined the company in 2017, 18 or 19 and they've seen us become a little bit more corporate than we were back in those days, right? But what we've tried to do at Encore Search Partners is not necessarily put a tremendous amount of stock in the high revenue producers and become beholden to, them holding us hostage to the way that we've always done business, but we've tried to implement processes and systems to where we can get a lot of the new people up to speed on being high level revenue producers. And so then it becomes a matter of, hey, if you're unhappy about these changes, that's perfectly okay. Right. But these new people that have just joined the team in the last 12 months, 18 months, they're completely on board with the future vision of the organization. And so it just kind of constantly keeps them a little bit more humble, a little bit more grateful. Whenever I see a lot of my competitors, a lot of times the executive team are held hostage by the high revenue producers. And that breeds a very negative culture of toxicity and entitlement. And we've tried to eliminate that from our business entirely.
You're doing something right because the growth and being one of the number one search firm, private firm, is that right?
Yeah, that's by revenue. Hmm.
What do you attribute from a leadership standpoint? What do you attribute how you did that? Because there's so many search
Hmm.
firms. There
Hmm.
are there's so many search firms, and it's so competitive, and some have been in business 30 years. I mean, what's the secret sauce there that has led you to be number one?
Yeah, so great question. There's probably 10 different ways that I could answer that question, but I'll simply state that um, myself as the founder CEO, I am not tied to revenue in any specific way. There's a lot of great recruiters that start recruiting firms and then they need to be the superhero rainmaker revenue generator, right? And oftentimes
Mhm.
they'll develop the client relationships, they'll do the client consulting, and quite often they're even the ones going out and finding the candidates, right? Well, if you're the recruiter and the CEO and the business development person, there comes a point in time where you can't continue to scale, right? Even from the very beginning, I knew that my secret sauce was that I was a very incredible marketer and lead generator. And so instead of maintaining client relationships, instead of going out and finding candidates, I've made it my 100% mission at Encore Search Partners to constantly be focused on how can I generate leads? How can I do new customer acquisition, right? How can we implement people, processes, and systems in order to do the entire service delivery in order to get a deal closed, right? But that never bogged my creativity down because I wasn't necessarily doing the work. I was always focused on how we could focus on growth.
And then obviously that drives the revenue. You have happier employees because they're not competing with you,
Mhm.
which I've seen in search firms a lot, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mhm.
When you look at, because I'm sure with the clients you work with leaders, right? Whether they're VP, CEO, whatever, C level HR. When you look at some of the best organizations you've worked with over the years, and you look at the best leaders from the outside looking in, what do the best leaders do in the organizations that you work with that are just they've got it down?
Yeah, I think if I were to sum it up into one specific phrase, the best leaders are always focused on continual improvement, right? Once they build that business up to 5 million and they're making seven figures as a founder, CEO, managing principal, it could be very easy to say, "Oh, I've achieved success," right? That my way works. But if you've got a leader that's constantly identifying what are my blind spots, what are the areas that I need to improve, if they're constantly focused on improving in those areas, yeah, they might need to hire a director of compliance or a VP of marketing or a technical account executive, right? And that expense may lower their net income by 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 for that first fiscal year, but they know that that's an investment in scalable growth. And so, to sum it up, I think that the best leaders are always trying to fill the gaps where they need to improve.
And it also sounds like, based on what you said, and even the way you run your business, is you're looking a little bit, not maybe not a lot, but you are looking longer term,
Mhm.
because I think so many people get caught up in that $250,000, the quarter million. Oh my gosh, that new employee, what are they costing us? And they're not seeing it as, hey, wait, this is an investment that we're going to get an ROI down the road.
Mhm.
Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just hit the nail on the head. And what a lot of people don't realize is when we think about revenue generating, right? Use the word ROI. We often think of sales professionals or marketing officers or revenue generators. But what we don't realize is let's say if I'm the greatest business developer and marketer at Encore Search Partners, if I'm being bogged down on analyzing reports and building business insights dashboards in order for my mid-level executives to make actionable decisions, that's going to take me away from revenue generating opportunities. And so I might recognize that the bottleneck in our organization is systems analysis and implementation. And so I can go out and find, a super smart 28-year-old guy to implement data around our processes and systems, and that could free us up to execute more business development initiatives, right? And so it's understanding that everything is integrated. That if I want to grow sales, it's not just I need to hire a salesperson. It's what people, processes, and systems can I implement in order to make the most effective sales strategies even more effective.
I love that. I love that. You talk about how your focus, being able to bring in business or generate leads. As you look at yourself as a leader
Hmm.
of the organization, what do you think your greatest superpower is? And maybe you already kind
Yeah.
of implied it, but what would you say your superpower is as a leader?
Great question. I did not imply it because I just thought about it whenever you asked me that question. And I would say it's my ability to make decisions quickly, execute quickly, and then pivot kind of as you go, right? I think there's so many leaders out there that they want every single decision to be perfect, right? But I think that you're losing a lot of opportunity whenever you are stalling in order to make decisions, right? We do a good job of executing quickly. And then maybe even if the result is a little bit off base, we've learned from the results that it yields, right? And so we can kind of pivot mid campaign or I'll give you an example, right? We hired basically a managing director over one of our largest business units about 3 years ago. This individual came with an extremely high six-figure salary, right? And I think there's a lot of people that could have put a lot of stock in that individual to say, "Hey, we want this to be the future C-level executive in the company," right? But there was a lot of things that we learned by employing that individual over the 2 years that he was here, uh, to where what we realized was we actually didn't need a VP of operations, right? Maybe we needed somebody
Mm.
that was going to focus on, recruitment, training. right? Standards and operating procedures. And so that next hire after that individual didn't work out, I didn't view it as, hey, we lost X amount of revenue by making a bad hire. I viewed it as we learned what we really needed in order to scale, right? And I was able to
Yeah, I
fill
love
that
that.
gap, right? So I think that inactivity is what really stalls organizations from growing, and kind of just doing it the way that they've always done it. And so failing fast is another quick way to say that.
I love that. And I always say failing forward
Yep.
faster, right?
Failing
Because
forward.
yeah, failing forward because you're really learning. I love I don't know if you're familiar with Sarah Blakely. She was the inventor of Spanx, which is
Mhm.
like $1 billion brand.
Yep.
And she talked about how when she was at the dinner table, right, with her dad,
Mhm.
and her dad would celebrate their failures for the week. And it's like, okay, what'd you fail at this week? And
Mhm.
they would be so excited to say, oh, here's what I did and I failed. And she said what it did is it taught her that that failure is really a step toward learning.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
love that. I also wanted to sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna say that
Uh,
I know, Sarah Blakely's husband, Jesse Itzler. Uh, yeah, he's a great guy.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
3 degrees of separation, right?
Absolutely.
We don't even need Kevin Bacon here.
Yeah.
And then the other thing you commented on is that you make decisions quickly. And one of the things that I've seen, I've interviewed about 3,000 high performers, leaders, et cetera. And the number one thing that I see in great leadership is decisiveness. And I think it's to your point because when they make decisions, even if they're wrong, they're able to readjust.
Mhm.
And the way I see it and what I've experienced is if even if they fail and they have to readjust
Mhm.
because they move quicker, ultimately they're still getting there faster than the person
Mhm.
who's, twiddling their thumbs thinking about it for another 3 months.
Mhm.
And so I love that you gave concrete example
Mhm.
of really, that
Mhm.
how that's impacted you. So
Mhm.
thank you. That's great.
Mhm.
What about if you look at just the state of leadership, businesses today, what do you think some of the big challenges are, in your opinion, that people are facing, other leaders are facing?
That other leaders are facing. I think that, overhead is increasing at such a rapid rate, right? Our rents are increasing, our technology expense, insurance, um, obviously the cost of labor, right? I remember whenever we started way back in 2010, an entry level recruiter started at $26,000 a year base salary plus commission, right? And so when you look at that, it's doubled. And so, with that being said, there's this constant expectation of what people expect in order to join the team. And when I look at Gen Z, quite often they would much rather take their compensation in more of a guarantee and less on a variable aspect. And so while the old school guys like me, we want a low base and a high commission in order to keep people hungry, we're losing out on a lot of that strong early career talent because maybe we're not offering the highest guarantee, right? And so what I would say is one of the biggest challenges is accommodating the younger workforce because their thought process in order to join organizations is entirely different than what it's been for the 20 years that precedes them, right? And so, in order for us to be competitive, in order to get those young innovators that move quickly, that are very adaptable and understand technology, we have to increase our right guaranteed commitment to them, right? But that comes with holding them to a higher standard with regards to productivity and key performance indicators.
You, so it sounds like you are, but have you adapted and have you accepted it? Because some of the folks that I've met with as I travel all over the world is some people are reluctant to. They're like, nope,
Mhm.
you know what? This is the way it is and suck it up. And it's always been this way.
Yep.
W- Sounds like you have, or
Yeah.
you've been reluctant. What's your take on that?
Yeah, great question. And so I would say that I was reluctant for many, many years, and that may have inhibited our growth and success, right? And so not to say that we were unsuccessful, but if we were growing at a 30% year over year rate, if I would have accommodated those superstars, early career professionals, right? Maybe we would have been 50%, right? Year over year growth. And so I think that there's this misconception that as long as I'm profitable and growing, that I'm successful. But if you were to benchmark it against maybe some of my other peers that were early adopters to offering right hybrid work schedules or remote workforces, or offering a base salary with a lower bonus program instead of a low draw and a high variable, right? A lot of those individuals have outperformed me on the J curve, right? And so while my revenue might still be higher, I kind of look at it like Walmart in, 2004, right? They were still beating Amazon, but who were the people that were growing at much more of a rapid rate, right? And so we got to
Right.
make sure that we can kind of blend uh, the old school thought process of being the 10,000 pound gorilla to say, hey, we've built a tremendous amount of success over the last 15 years in business, but how can we still be competitive with the Amazons that are stealing market share?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, historically, I think the way people have done business is, they got a round peg and they want the round hole, the round peg in the round hole, but that peg isn't round anymore. It's
Mhm.
changed. And we're people are getting frustrated and they're saying, well, they're going to, the new generation's going to have to change. The problem is they're not. They're growing up with AI, they're
Mhm.
growing up with tech, and many of them are growing up seeing their parents
Mhm.
having worked for 25 years at a company that, a job for life, and then they're getting laid off.
Mhm.
And that loyalty and that mindset is so different from
Mhm.
a younger generation. I think
Mhm.
it's critical.
Mhm.
What about you mentioned the remote workers. Do you have any remote workers?
So of our 40 employees, we've got 3 that actually work remotely. One of them is a data analyst, right? More of an entry level individual. And so her KPIs are a little bit more measurable, right?
Hmm.
And then we've got 2 high level revenue generators that have been with the firm for over 7 years, right? And so there's a tremendous amount of trust there that they're going to get their job done with very minimal oversight. I haven't yet adopted the idea of onboarding a brand new recruiter with no industry experience and just giving them an opportunity to work remote. I guess you could say that I've been to Lifetime Fitness too many times at 2 p.m. and wondered, what the hell do all these people do for work? And so maybe I'm a little bit fearful that those will be my employees hanging out at the park midday.
Hopefully not. And the
Yeah.
thing about, your type of work is it's easier to measure success as opposed to some jobs where the measurements are not as clear. So I
Yep.
kind of feel like when people get in this whole argument about, remote work and work from home, I think it's all about the measurement. Because
Hmm.
in sales or performance related, I think it's a lot easier to watch that and monitor. So I was just
Yeah.
curious. I didn't know
Yeah.
if that was there.
Yeah, well,
What about
you talk about the measuring aspect of it, right? And this is where it gets a little bit tricky because I know of an individual who works remotely and has a job as a logistics supervisor for a third party logistics trucking company, right? And so she gets paid about $78,000 a year, but she pays her 19-year-old daughter $20 an hour to do her job. And so she's trained her, right? She's logged into the computer as her. She's the one that's moving things and this and that, right? And when you look at just the sheer profitability of that spread, it's incredible. So she actually has another full-time job as well. And so who's really getting screwed here, right? The employer is paying exactly what they wanted and the job is getting done with their KPIs being met, but that dishonesty is kind of like what gives a lot of people a little bit of heartburn. And I think that if remote workers were maybe just a little bit more transparent with what they really wanted, right? Then maybe we could find an environment where everybody was happy and their needs were met.
that? And that's a whole nother topic I don't want to get into
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
it is you're right, but you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that the employer is getting what the results that they expected,
Mhm.
but how it's getting done. I knew a guy, um, he was a top performer in a tech company,
Mhm.
and people were like, "How are you so good?" And what I found out years later when I was doing these interviews is he had hired someone to do all his phone calling for him.
Mhm.
So they were setting appointments for him. It's kind of like the new model is how most companies do it today, but this is before that was acceptable.
Yep.
So he just hired an assistant booking appointments,
Yep.
and this guy was able to go on appointments, and appointment he was on was a closing call.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many years it took companies to realize that that's a better use of certain high profile people's
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
right? So I think the whole message that I'm getting from this conversation is what you said is being adaptable and being willing and being able to change
Mhm.
quickly,
Mhm.
because that's, I think, our only guarantee in our life is change.
Absolutely, and the story that you just shared, it kind of reminds me of this paradigm shift, that I've seen in business over the last 15 years. Is historically, whenever people have been compensated on time and grade, now I think employers are migrating more towards a performance-based culture, right? And so if that guy is yielding, let's say $10 million in revenue and the average account executive is only doing 2, should they really care how he gets his leads or what resources or technology that he utilizes, right? More power to him.
Yeah, I mean, they're making money, and the only problem I've seen over the years is when, and I'm curious if this happens in your organization, and you don't have to answer if you don't want, but I see in some organizations where it is pay for performance,
Mhm.
some of the employees are earning more than the executives, and the ego gets in the way, and then they're like, well, we don't like that, so then they cut that,
Yep.
and then those you decrease the motivation, but you're cutting off the nose to spite your face, because
Mhm.
now you're not you're not making that revenue.
Mhm. Mhm.
Thoughts on that?
I mean, that's a high level sales professional making more than a chief operations officer is not uncommon in business.
Right?
I'll use an example, right? So, like our senior manager of growth and development, she's responsible for internal recruiting, right, and training, and she runs our marketing and business development. And quite often she's bringing in, early career people that she may have 10 years more of industry experience, but in their offer letter, they're projected to make more money than her. Right. And so it's one of those situations where it's like, hey, Jacqueline, you knew exactly what career you were migrating into whenever you were getting your master's in human resources instead of professional excellence in selling. You know what I'm saying? And so I would say that that's not uncommon. The way that that shows up in our organization is, when you look at our chief operations officer, that individual, is responsible for finance, IT, right, operations, accounting, etc. But then my division president that gets paid like a managing partner in a law firm, his variable compensation is exponentially higher, right, than
Yeah.
that COO, right? And so you've got two essentially VP level executives, but the wage disparity is quite large. And so it's one of those deals to where it's like if you do want to get paid on production, you can absolutely modify your career path and go that way. But if you're going to get paid the comfort of a six-figure salary, then I don't believe that there should be this massive variable comp on top of
And I think we got to put the ego away
it. Mhm.
to be able to say, hey, I'm okay that this person who is really below me from a hierarchy makes more than me because of
Mhm.
what they do, and
Mhm.
they're bringing in revenue.
Dude,
So
it's so funny. We recruit for law firms. That's one of the biggest verticals that we recruit for. And the first year associate at a big law, right, top 20 firm starts at 215,000. A first year associate. It's unbelievable. And when
crazy.
and we have placed COOs of those firms, they get paid 250, 250. guys with 30 years of experience, right? But they're not revenue generators tied to billable
Right.
hours, right? And so
It's crazy. Yeah,
it's
it's
the
crazy. It's crazy.
and it's gonna be crazy 10 years from now, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
the people that are doing a lot of the tactical work, I think a lot of those individuals are exposed to their jobs being eliminated by AI, offshoring, and automation. And the one thing that will always be protected are the individuals that bring in revenue for the company, not
True.
the people that are flipping the switch.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Good insight. Well, two more quick questions. First one, as you look at your own leadership, your own who you are,
Mhm.
what is an area for yourself that you want to get even better at? Maybe it's not where you want to be, maybe you're challenged by it, but what's an area that you look in the mirror and say, look, I know I got to get better at this.
Hmm. So my love language is words of affirmation. Um, you know,
Well,
so
Jeremy, I'll just tell you
uh,
right now, I love you.
thank you, thank you.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
and with that being said, I think that that I often, even whenever I'm giving gifts to my children or my fiance or a discretionary bonus to one of my team members, I'm looking for that pat on the back, that thank you, that gratitude aspect. And one of the things that I'm really trying to develop more of is removing, I guess, that ego aspect that really fuels a lot of that words of affirmation. And I would really love to be able to be in a position to where I could give without expecting anything in return. And so it's a constant conversation that I'm having with my life coach, right? In order to become a little bit uh I guess more content in that regard. But unfortunately, maybe that's tied to my success that, I'm always looking for that lollipop.
I love that. But thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sharing the vulnerability and
yeah.
the honesty. All right. So last question. Uh, what is a question you wish people would ask you, but they don't know to ask you?
Hmm.
And I don't necessarily mean me
Yeah.
in this topic, but just in general, what's a question you just in life in your life? You're like, I wish
Yep.
people would ask me this.
So that's a great question, actually, and I've never been asked that. So when you look at the scalability that we've had since 2013, a lot of it has to do with the fact that my executive team has stayed together, right? I mean, quite often we see VPs and C-level people change firms. You have a bad quarter, we blame it on that guy. He gets managed out of the organization. But it's the fact that my division president, my COO, and myself, we've all kind of been together at the executive table ever since that very first EOS strategy session in 2016. And so I wish people would say, what's the key to keeping the executive team together for so long? And I would say that the answer is trust and rapport. And so I'll give a tactical example on how trust shows up, right? Uh, we had an individual that was a senior recruiter, and unfortunately, there was a personality conflict. We ended up having to let him go in 2019. And about 5 months later, a deal closed, and our fee on that deal was $81,000. And so, per the terms of our employment agreement, right? If we let somebody go, we're still going to pay you your commission on anything that moves within the next 6 months. But this was a deal that he didn't know about whenever he left. It wasn't on the board. It wasn't in the sales pipeline, right? It kind of like materialized out of thin air. And so I told Scott and Casey, I said, hey, call Mike Marler and tell him that we owe him the commission on this deal, right? And I mean, we're talking eight figures, right? I'm sorry, four, 5 figures. Yeah, not 8 figures. But with that being said, yeah, there could be a lot of executives out there that could have just swept that under the rug and said, "Hey, I'm just not going to pay this commission because he doesn't even know that it's coming." But that trust that it bred with the two other executives that said, "Hey, Jeremy is always going to do what's right, whether it personally serves him or not," that probably yielded way more loyalty and stickiness, right? In an era when we were experiencing this J curve, whenever they could have gone out and started their own firms to compete with me. And so if you have trust and rapport with fellow leaders in the company, I think that that's going to be the secret to continuity and success over time.
I love that. I love that. What a great example.
Mm.
What if someone wants to learn more about Encore Search or about Jeremy Jensen? What what should they do? Or any last thoughts here?
Absolutely. So I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn, right? You could track me down on there. It's just Jeremy Jensen. I've got a little goat emoji after my last name. Or if you'd like to follow my personal life, I have a lot of fun. You could follow me on Instagram. It's just my name. And then if you want to shoot me a DM, I promise I'll reply and I can point you in the right direction from there.
All right. Well, it has been such a pleasure talking to you. I loved your insights and your enthusiasm and just your perspective on things. And especially the last comment you made. It's very rare that when someone leaves a company that you still pay a commission to them. And so kudos to you for having that integrity and the character is really remarkable. So thank you for being a guest today.
Excellent. Thank you,
Uh,
David.
Folks, this is Inside the Leader's Mind. Thank you so much for listening. I'm David Susan, and we'll see you next time.